What's up everyone, John from ARTV. Time for a review of the 7th studio album by rock band Linkin Park. It's called One More Light, and it's their first that has really kind of deviated from at least some sort of signature rock core to it. It's the first one that really seems to be like a big movement. Of course, you could probably say the same thing about 1,000 Suns, but even that, especially in the lyrical content, was at least somewhat akin to some of their prior stuff. One More Light was definitely surprising me with the single releases, and a lot of fans were very, very angry with them, but I've honestly come to accept and understand things a little bit better. To put it in perspective, I've queued this up for you. So I'll admit I was a little bit triggered whenever I saw Chester Bennington basically saying, move on from Hybrid Theory. It's over, like we're never going back. That's what I took away from it, at least, whenever I saw it without context. But once I looked up the little radio interview that he did, I saw exactly what this was. And I started to see, I guess, a little bit more of the inside of why they wanted to do what they did with this very, very poppy sound. And we're gonna get to the contents of the record in just a second, don't worry. But I wanted to give my brief take on why I feel this is an okay move for them overall. So, Linkin Park obviously have been a band for quite a while now. They started in the 90s, broke into the mainstream in 2000 with that album Hybrid Theory. I love that record. I love the majority of their albums that have released to date. And while I do feel like this new one is their weakest, I understand it. What Chester Bennington was kind of saying is, why are we still talking about Hybrid Theory? Why are we still being held to that standard, even though that record came out practically 20 years ago? Almost 2 decades have passed since then. Why are we still talking about Hybrid Theory? Obviously, they've shown up to promote their new stuff. They don't just want to be asked the same questions over and over again, or why do you think fans hate your new sound, or stuff like that. And I can get it, and I get the snappy comments that he kind of made. So I'll be the first to admit that whenever I saw that headline, Chester Bennington says, move the F on from Hybrid Theory, I was a little bit triggered. It hurt me a little bit in my core. But you have to look into these things in context. I feel like that and another quote about like stab yourself in the face, where he was jokingly saying something, were taken totally out of context. I think a lot of fans seem to run with it. And the more I look into it, the more I am totally understanding where they're coming from here. And I get it. I just have to quickly defend, even though this probably is my least favorite Linkin Park release, I have to defend their right to be able to do what they want to do. And I understand the sound a little bit more. Now, if you know anything about Linkin Park, pretty much every single album they've seen a drastic change in sound. Maybe not totally drastic, not an overhaul, especially in the lyrical content or anything like that, but the overall sound of the record, each one is unique. And this is another one that's going to stand out in their discography, and I'm sure their next release, whether it be rock or punk or pop, again, I feel like it's going to have a different flavor to it. Maybe they'll try the whole 80s thing next, who knows? But with this record, I have to say that I understand Chester Bennington's frustrations here. And I was looking at him in a little bit of a critical tone at first, but now I see, if you're being asked about the same old album, or don't you think fans will hate this new sound and that sort of thing, over and over and over again, especially if you really are putting your effort into this and these new tracks that you're working on, I get how that can be tedious. Even though I don't like a lot of these songs, I understand the need to create different forms of art, different forms of music, and I do think that bands are allowed to evolve in that way. Now, that being said, I do feel like some of this is a de-evolution, and this is not me backtracking on things that I've said about other bands like Fall Out Boy drastically changing their sound. Yes, of course they have the right to. They can do whatever the hell they want. Any of these bands can. They're grown men. They can do what they want to with their sound. But I'm just saying we obviously also have the right to be critical, but we also, I think, need to be respectful at the same time, and I apologize if I didn't come off that way in my heavy track review. Now, let's get into the actual content here. I get it. I get why Chester did that. I can make snappy remarks myself just because I get tired of people asking me the same questions like, what's your intro music, and that sort of thing. And if I get frustrated with that, imagine having like 50 million fans on Facebook or however many Twitter followers they have asking you every single day about how let down they are or why did you change. In the making of One More Light, the band set out to do something drastically different than they had ever done with their sound, and they definitely succeeded with that. They went in writing the lyrical content first and letting the music flow forth from there. Although I do feel like a couple of key members got left out in the process of that, like like, where's Phoenix? Where's Han on this record? It seems like it's mainly more the Brad, Chester, and Mike show. And that's okay for what it is, but the amount of outside co-writers here just seems to kind of downplay the significance of the other members in the band. It's okay, but it also really makes me question some of their choices. Also, a lot of outside producers here. Obviously, RAC was a big one, a big influence on the sound for One More Light, and I'm not exactly sure how I'm feeling about every single track, although there are some really solid standout moments, although I can't say that there's anything that I'm just head over heels in love with. I think the burning question on pretty much everybody's mind is, John, is there any rock on this record? Is there anything to it? Did they stick to their guns at all? And the answer is yes, there are guitars that pop up here. I already mentioned that it was the Chester, Mike, and Brad show. Brad Delson is their guitarist, and he definitely pops up here, albeit in a much different and more unique fashion. I like the acoustic guitar that's used on the closing track, Sharp Edges, and that one has some clever lyrical content as well that I'm really thoroughly digging. Although it can come off a bit cheesy, especially at first listen, I like the message of the track. And on other moments here, they find clever ways to work the guitar into the background, like on the breakdown of a track like Invisible, or even Halfway Right. It's there, it's in the background, although I do wish it got turned up just a bit more. Talking to Myself is probably the most rocking tune here. It's one that makes great use of the electric guitar, and Chester's vocals here are much more raw, a little bit rough. I like the way that he says everything on this when it comes through. It feels like somebody's talking to themselves, basically coming from his wife's perspective. Like he said, you know, you're out here on the road, you're doing all these shows and everything, and that is a theme that we're going to see throughout, not just from a significant other's point of view, also from Mike Shinoda talking to his kids several times on this record. Like he said in an interview, he's basically laying it down for them like this is a time capsule. Look at songs like Invisible, or else Sorry for Now. Play this later and understand maybe why I had to discipline you the way that I did, or why I am disciplining you the way that I am right now, or maybe why I was on the road so much, or why I couldn't always be there for everything. And the song Sorry for Now, I think, is definitely the better of the two, written from that angle. I think we really get something here that shows his love and appreciation for his kids, and it's definitely different looking at Linkin Park from this perspective. I mean, a lot of them are definitely fathers now, and that's crazy just to see them all grown up in this different perspective. Yes, they're dealing with things like addiction and the lyrical content, like Heavy is one that I feel like focuses on alcoholism, especially as shown in the video, and that one has definitely grown on me. They're definitely touching on different subject matters than in the past. Some of them are more familiar, but some of these other ones, like I said, about kids and relationships and stuff, it's new. It's new to Linkin Park fans, it's new to me, and it's new to the band in general. Now, something else that's probably pretty hard to comprehend from longtime Linkin Park fans is all of the outside production, all of the glossified feels that these tracks are giving off, the pitch shifted vocals, and the way that those are manipulated on multiple tracks here, like Battle Symphony right off the bat on the opening song, Nobody Can Save Me. Good Goodbye even has it in the background. One of these tracks even uses that as like the drop of the song, and it does get a bit aggravating, but they kind of redeem themselves, especially as it goes on. Like Sorry for Now, for example, I like the use of kind of getting out of that and then adding Chester Bennington in the later part of the song. Mike really takes control on a lot of the vocals on this one, in fact, singing Invisible entirely by himself, which is cool, even though it's kind of a least favorite for me. I like the idea behind it, I guess, but it just kind of flatlines, as a lot of these tracks do. They're just kind of like void of life. They don't have character, they don't have heart or personality. Even though they have it in the subject matter, they don't relay that with the music because it almost feels dehumanized. The band's love of electronic music has always been known. I mean, they've worked with Steve Aoki multiple times. They basically made an ode to that in their album A Thousand Suns, and they got much more political, and that's something that I would have liked to have seen. Like Minutes to Midnight, great release there in terms of like the politically charged tracks, although not my favorite album from them. Definitely love moments like Little Things Give You Away. And in this political climate that we're in now, more than ever, I would love to see something like that just angrily flowing out of Mike Shinoda. But unfortunately, he only raps on one song here, and that is Good Goodbye. In fact, a lot of these songs feel like lightweight feathers, just kind of floating around, kind of like walking on eggshells, like they talked about in their old song, Afraid to Not Get Stepped On. You know, you don't want to do it, you don't want to offend somebody or something like that. And this song, I mean, Good Goodbye, I guess you could kind of see that as like him dominating, calling people out. He said it was a sarcastic sarcastic tune and kind of the outlier doesn't fit in with the rest of the songs, and I will agree with that. I'll give him that. It's a relatively good song, although I would have liked to have seen him maybe at least handle 2 verses. I could maybe do without Stormzy on this one, and I would have liked to have heard more from King Push. Pusha T comes through with a killer verse once again, and I'm not knocking Stormzy's contribution. It's just that whenever I listen to Linkin Park, it's like I know Mike Shinoda can rap, and I would like to hear more from that. His singing voice is good. It's not the best by any means. I just would have liked to have heard more from Mike in terms of like the MC abilities, because I know that he has it. In kind of a 180 move, I've definitely changed my opinion on Heavy featuring Kiara. I don't know how I feel about her contribution to the track, although I agree that a female vocalist on the tune, it feels right. It does feel right there. I like the way that this track kind of absorbs over time. It starts off with kind of a knocking beat, and you notice that all throughout this record. There's kind of almost some rattling hi-hats, a little bit of trap-leaning production here and there, especially with those things that are like, the vocal manipulations. It definitely feels like a lot of what's going on in pop music, but Heavy kind of just plays to this bass-heavy, intimate, kind of stripped back feel, and it builds as it goes, and I do like that. And I think a lot of what made me appreciate this track all that much more was the Our Last Night cover of this song. They did like a heavier cover of Heavy, and I feel like they took it to the next level, and it made me look into the lyrical content a little bit more, and I see what's going on here. I don't like the way that it comes across kind of whiny on this one. His vocals are definitely pitched differently. The band themselves said it. They were pitched in different ways on this track, and it doesn't feel natural. They kind of got back to that with the rest of the record. Chester sounds like himself, and like I mentioned, I like the way he sounds on One More Light, but on this one in particular, he does feel maybe a little bit off, but I have to say, the song's grown on me. It's not that bad, especially once it gets into its second act, past the Kiara verse. I'm into it a little bit more. We've got a sad story behind the title track, One More Light. It's one about the loss of a friend that worked at their record label, and just the way that things went. They weren't able to really attend the funeral, only Brad was able to go. And the fallout from there, even though you don't know someone like that, it's like they're singing from the perspective of, do we really just want to lose one more light that's up there in the sky, somebody that was shining bright in our lives? And does it really matter? It's just one light. And Chester sings, yes, it does matter. And really, Mike wrote the primary parts of this song, but Chester comes in on the vocals, does a great job here. It's just a very stripped back tune. There's really no beat and no glamour to it whatsoever, and it needs that. This album, I think, needed the more human side, and I'm glad that they weren't afraid to show that. Before I close out this review, I wanted to throw praise to one track that is absolutely my favorite on this project. It's called Halfway Right, and it really sees a great vocal performance that is kind of restrained from Chester Bennington, but at the same time, it fits the flow of the song. It's like REC meets Flume in terms of the production. It sounds a little bit like Never Be Like You, if I'm being quite honest, that big hit from 2016. But here, they come through with kind of a song that seems to be about justifying your actions. It seems like you're falling apart at the seams. Maybe he's just gotten in the car, started driving whenever he was under the influence, not knowing where he was going, telling this old tale here, and he says that somebody gave him the advice. All you said to do was slow down. I remember all you said was to slow down, but I was already gone. He had taken off at that point, and I like the way that the chorus hits on this track. The verses definitely have a pulsating vibe to them, but it's still at the same time very chill, very relaxed. It's definitely something that you can get into the groove of, and I have to praise them for this track because the way that they did the lyrical content here, the way that they set it up, it's actually quite unique and clever for Linkin Park, especially on an album like this. It stands tall. I came into One More Light thinking I was really gonna hate it. I thought I was at least gonna extremely dislike it, but a lot of the record's problems just fall in the fact that it's inoffensive. It really doesn't get stuck in your memory. It's kind of forgettable, and I think that that is its biggest crime that it commits. It doesn't stand out, and it does feel kind of void of that Linkin Park personality. I don't think this is going to be the Linkin Park album that stands the test of time. Like 10 years from now, people are still going to be like, oh wow, what a great record, or anything like that. But it's got a few relatable songs on there that you can definitely jam to. There's a vibe. I will give them this. It's got a kind of a running groove all throughout that I do dig, but overall, I think a lot of this album isn't for me. I'm going to be generous and give this thing a light 3 out of 5. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. I know this is going to be a controversial one, but I do think it'll grow on you, especially if you listen to it at least a handful of times. Don't forget to leave a like on the video today and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because friends don't let friends go unsubscribed. If you're able to, support the channel on Patreon. Help these videos keep coming on a monthly basis. If you want to see another Linkin Park themed video, click right here or right here for a recent review that I did on the channel. I've got a Linkin Park top 20 countdown coming very soon. Other than that, I'll see you very soon right here on ARTV.